Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Monday Study Group. The group today studied Song of Solomon, chapters 5 and 6, and also voted to take up the documents from early Christianity called the Didache and the letters of Ignatius of Antioch as our next study. So the plan will be that I will send out study questions for the next and last two chapters of the Song of Songs, or the Song of Solomon, chapters 7 and 8. This week I'll send you out the study questions, and then next Monday we'll finish the Song of Solomon with the in-person group and also with the video. Then you will get discussion questions or study questions for the Didache. The Didache is available for free online. And I'll send you this week the link so that you can start reading the Didache. It's not long. The chapters are short. I think there's only 8 or 9 of them. And it was written toward the end of the first century. So we will be getting a window into Christianity after the New Testament. The earliest documents, other than the letters of Papias, which are only in fragments, we will be looking at the earliest documents from post-first century Christianity. The other thing the group did this morning was to sing "Let All Things Now Living," and I'll spare you my singing of it and read the 2 verses of "Let All Things Now Living." I chose this song for the group to sing because of its references to nature, which makes it analogous to the Song of Solomon with its many references to nature. So, "Let All Things Now Living, a song of thanksgiving to God the Creator, triumphantly raise, who fashioned and made us, protected and stayed us, who still guides us on to the end of our days. God's banners are o'er us, his light goes before us, a pillar of fire shining forth in the night, till shadows have vanished and darkness is banished, as forward we travel from light into light. His law he enforces, the stars in their courses, and sun in its orbit obediently shine. The hills and the mountains, the rivers and fountains, the deeps of the ocean proclaim him divine. We too should be voicing our love and rejoicing. With glad adoration, a song let us raise, till all things now living unite in thanksgiving. To God in the highest, Hosanna and praise." Thank you, God, for the gift of life, for the enjoyment of all the things you have created. We ask your blessing on our study of the Song of Solomon, that we might be faithful to entering into this text, listening to it. Help us to live by its joyful expression of human love. In Jesus' name, amen. So, Song of Solomon, chapters 5 from verse 2 through the end of chapter 6. Now I'll try to summarize the gist or the sense of the study group that met this morning and add a few of my own comments to that. So when we start with chapter 5, verse 2, we have in the opening 7 verses an account of a dream It very much appears like a dream, and we did have some conversation about various dreams that we had and how real they seem, and how the same dream can come again and yet have details that are different. This woman has another dream. We saw her previously in a dream in chapter 3, and now this dream occurs again. It has some similarities to the previous one, but major differences. She says she slept, but her heart was awake. That's what indicates to me that it is a dream. It's not that she slept and woke up. She says she slept, but her heart was awake. That is, she is in a dream state, perhaps half awake, fantasizing, or this is the report of a dream. I slept, but my heart was awake. And what did she experience? She experienced her lover knocking. And he calls out to her, "Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my perfect one." The word for door is not there. It doesn't say open the door. It says open to me, which might mean open yourself to me, but it just says open to me. And he describes himself as one whose head is wet with dew and whose locks drip with the drops of the night. Somebody get the guy a towel, I said in the study questions, but he gives the reason for his wanting to come in as that he's wet. The woman reporting her response to this knocking and request at the door says that she had put off her outer garment. She's just had her undergarment that she sleeps in on. She put off her garment. How could I put it on again? And besides, I had bathed my feet. How could I soil them again? That is, she lives in a house that has a dirt floor, a beaten dirt floor, probably with reeds on it, not in a paved palace. And she says that it would be inconvenient for her to get up in the dream. Well, there's teasing going on here, isn't there? He's teasing her a little bit, open the door to me. And she says, yeah, I could, but it would be inconvenient for a couple of reasons. And then the beloved acts quite aggressively by thrusting his hand into the opening, and that movement of his caused her inmost being to yearn for him. That is, she was deeply moved by his aggressive reaching out through the opening near the door for the lock to open the door himself. My inmost being yearned for him. I really wanted him. So in the dream, she arose to open to her beloved. Open herself or open the door? Both could be implied in the poetry. And her hands dripped with myrrh and her fingers with liquid myrrh upon the handles of the lock. They both need a towel. They're both wet. So she opened the door to her beloved. It took her a little while. She opened the door to her beloved, but he had gone. He had turned and was gone. He wasn't there. My soul failed me when he spoke. She's remembering what it felt like in her inner being when he spoke to her. My soul failed when he spoke, and I sought him, but I did not find him. Remember back in chapter 3, it says twice, I sought him whom my soul loves, but I did not find him. Same wording here. In the dream, she seeks him and calls for him, but he gives no answer. He's gone. And then suddenly, and this is the kind of thing that happens in a dream without any transitions, it just suddenly, there's another scene in the dream. You've had this happen in your dreams, haven't you? You're dreaming that you're in a place, perhaps, and then suddenly, without transitioning, you're in another place. A different scene related to the first one, maybe, but different. And so now she's in the city somehow. How did she get there? It doesn't ever say that she got up and got dressed and went out and searched all the streets and plazas of the city as it did in chapter 3. Just suddenly she's in the city, and the sentinels or guardians or watchmen find her. And this time, instead of just ignoring her, as they did in chapter 3, they think she is a street prostitute. And so they beat her. Now, that is implied in the actions that they took against her. It never says that they thought she was a prostitute, but that's the kind of action they might take with a streetwalker in the night in the city. The sentinels find her, misunderstand why she's there, beat her, wound her, take away her outer garment, those sentinels of the walls. She'd only been trying to find her lover. And so we learn in verse 8 that she's been recounting this dream to the daughters of Jerusalem. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, whom I haven't been able to find, tell him this. If you find him before I do, tell him that I am faint with love. So a dream sequence in which she is in bed, asleep, but her mind or heart is awake. She experiences in the dream the coming of the lover to knock on the door, to reach in toward the lock to unlock it for himself. But she gets up finally to do it, and when she does, he's gone, and then she finds herself in the city, and she's looking for him, but the guards find her and beat her. And then she says to the daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my love, tell him that I am faint with love. This recounting of the dream to the daughters of Jerusalem caused them to say, what's so special about your beloved? What is your beloved more than any other beloved, O fairest among women? What is your beloved more than any other beloved that you thus cause us to swear, as you did in verse 8, that if we find your beloved, we would tell him that you're faint with love? That gives her then, this is a literary device, isn't it? It's a literary device that the daughters of Jerusalem ask a question of her, challenge her, and so that gives her the opportunity then to, at length, describe him as he has previously described her. She describes him from head to toe, and he's gold from head to toe. He's precious. He's all radiant and ruddy, distinguished among 10,000 other men. His head is finest gold, his locks are wavy, his hair is black as a raven. His eyes are like doves beside springs of water. The whites are so clear they're like bathed in milk. His eyes are fitly set in his head. Again, we're not sure what the Hebrew means there. His cheeks, her cheeks are like halves of pomegranates. His cheeks are like beds of spices yielding fragrance. His lips are like lilies. distilling liquid myrrh. His arms are rounded gold. They're strong, they're rounded, muscular, set with jewels. We're not exactly sure what that means. His body is like ivory work. It's smooth and strong and encrusted with sapphires. Again, we're not sure what that means. The Hebrew says lapis lazuli. It could be a reference to his chest. His legs are like alabaster columns. They're strong. They're probably light-skinned like alabaster, set upon bases of gold. His feet are, as it were, not feet of clay, perhaps. Maybe that's implied, not feet of clay, but feet of gold, strong metal. His overall appearance is like the stately cedar trees of Lebanon, tall, straight, fragrant. His speech is most sweet. He is altogether, everything about him is desirable. This is my beloved, she says to the daughters of Jerusalem. This is my friend. You asked me why he was special. Now I've told you. So then they respond, so you told us about your dream, if that's what it was, and you've described how special your lover is to you. Where is he then? Where is your beloved gone, O fairest among women? Which way has your lover turned? You said he turned and left you in the dream. Where did he go? Maybe we'll go with you to seek him. That's not exactly welcome to her. She doesn't want competition. We discussed the possibility that what the daughters of Jerusalem are saying is, we find your beloved quite desirable too. Maybe we'll go with you and find him ourselves. She doesn't want any part of that. Three's a crowd, and we don't know how many daughters of Jerusalem there are, but it would be more than three. So she just wants her beloved to herself. She doesn't want the daughters of Jerusalem tagging along. And so she says, my beloved has gone down to his garden. Earlier in the poem, she herself was the garden that he comes to. So it's implied that the beloved is hers. He has gone down to his garden, to the beds of spices, to pasture his flock in the gardens, to gather the lilies. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine, not yours. I belong to him, he belongs to me. He pastures his flock among the lilies, which is her self-description, probably. So she is not interested in having company alongside herself and her lover. Then there's a break, and it appears in verse 4 that what we have is the male lover describing, again, as he did previously, describing the female lover. Beautiful as two capital cities, Tirzah, which was at one time the capital of the northern kingdom, and Jerusalem. Cities were often referred to as her or she. So it's not that unusual that the woman should be compared to a beautiful capital city. Terrible or awesome as an army with banners. There's something awesome about her, fearsome about her. Not just beautiful, but startling, surprising, maybe even scary. He says, turn away your eyes from me, for they overwhelm me when I look at you. I'm not in control anymore. You take over my life. Your hair, like a flock of goats moving down the slopes of Gilead. We heard that before. Again, your teeth are just the same as they were before. She hasn't lost any teeth between chapter 4 and chapter 6. They're all still there. Not one of them is missing. Your cheeks are still like halves of pomegranate behind your veil. Well, as I understand it, the Hebrew here doesn't say that she's veiled. It says that her hair is her veil, behind your tresses, behind your hair. So she has long hair and it's at least partially covering her face, but he can see her cheeks behind her veil. Then it says, there are 60 queens and 80 concubines and maidens without number. And I'm going to put a but in here before verse 9. But my dove, my perfect one, is the only one. So there may be 60 queens and 80 concubines and maidens without number, perhaps thought to be in the court of Solomon. But this one, my special one, is incomparable. There's no one like her. Not only is she the only one to me, but she is the darling of her mother, flawless to the one who bore her. Even the maidens, the girls mentioned in verse 8, even the maidens saw her and called her happy. And the queens and concubines also, they praised her. And what did they say? They say, verse 10, who is this that looks forth like the dawn, fair as the moon, bright as the sun, awesome, terrible as an army with banners? She is outstanding. She stands out from all other women. That's what the lover thinks of her, and that's what he says other women also think of her. Excuse me. I want to say then that verses 11 and 12 that come next, there's no agreement among the best commentators that have written on the Song of Solomon about what these verses mean, or even who is speaking them. Now, if you're using the NRSV translation, you're going to think that the woman is speaking them. And I think also the NIV identifies the speaker as the woman. Excuse me. But in fact, we don't know for sure what these verses mean. If it's the woman, she seems to say that she went down into the nut orchard to look at the blossoms and to see whether the vines had budded, whether the pomegranates were in bloom. But before she was aware, her fancy, her imagination, set her in a chariot beside her prince. Again, the footnote says that the Hebrew is uncertain. Most commentators do not know exactly what was intended by the Hebrew text and have suggested a variety of amendments to the text, but there's no agreement on what the correct amendment, if one is needed, might be. It says she was aware, she was set in a chariot, and then beside my prince is a possible interpretation, but that's not really literally what the Hebrew says. So you may have something different in the translation you're using. But at any rate, if the woman is speaking, it seems as she's describing an experience where she went to the orchard to see things that were in bloom, and suddenly, surprisingly, she found herself sitting in a chariot, possibly beside her prince. Then the chorus, or the daughters of Jerusalem, speak again. Return, return, return from where? The orchard, maybe. O Shulamite. Nobody knows what Shulamite means. There are so many possibilities. There could have been a town called Shulim or Shulam that she was from. There was a town, Shunem. So maybe this got miswritten as Shulamite when it should have been Shunamite. Possible. The Shulam is the same as Shalom, different vowels but same consonants. So maybe she is a peaceful one or a perfect one, a Shalomite. It also is the same word for Solomon, the feminine form of Solomon. So is she one who belongs to Solomon, a Solomonite? But that's not what the Hebrew text says. The Hebrew text says Shulamite. Return, return, O Shulamite, return that we may look upon you. The chorus calls her back from the nut orchard, perhaps. Chapter 6 closes with the saying, why should you look upon the Shulamite as upon a dance before two armies? Again, no agreement on what this refers to, the dancing before two armies. It could be that she's so beautiful that she will distract the two armies, as the fictional army, because she's so beautiful. But it's a poetic expression that occurs at the end of the chapter. It's separated off as a separate verse, as if it were just attached there as a poetic line or two, but no one knows for sure how it connects. So that's what we have in chapters 5 and 6 of the Song of Solomon. That may be frustrating to you that we can't answer all the questions that the text gives us. We can't even sometimes make educated guesses as to what it means if the Hebrew text itself was broken or something had been left out in the copies that exist. We don't know. So one of the things you learn, I think, from studying the Song of Solomon, as well as other books of the Bible, is that you can't know everything that you want to know. Some things remain ambiguous. Some things have multiple meanings. It does not mean that any text can mean anything you want it to mean. It doesn't mean that everybody's interpretation of a text is correct because everybody gets to interpret the Bible any way they want to. No, there are rules. There are rational explanations. We go by the Hebrew text as best we can. We look at other ancient versions to see how under those who translated the Hebrew into other languages understood the text. There are guidelines that you interpret verses in the light of the previous verses that were spoken in this book, so that previous descriptions give you insight into similar descriptions that occur later. There are good basic rules for interpreting the Bible. I taught a whole weekend seminar one time, more than once, both here in Coopville on the island, Whidbey Island, and then over in Mukilteo at Mukilteo Presbyterian Church. We had a workshop on how to interpret the Bible. And there are many good books that you can read to get an understanding, to eliminate the idea that a text can mean anything. Yes, you can read your own meanings into the text, but don't say that that's what the text means. All right, I've preached enough about that. But some texts have to be left open. We don't know what they mean. You can speculate, but you should know that that's what you're doing. You're simply speculating. You cannot impose your meaning on other people who don't understand the text that way, or who are willing to just leave it open and say, I don't understand it. It doesn't seem clear to me. That's an honest position. All right, we will finish the Song of Songs next week. Study questions for 7 and 8 will come out this week. In-person group will meet next Monday and discuss the last two chapters. I'll make another video next Monday that will finish the Song of Solomon. And then I will send you information on the next set of studies that we're going to do, which will be focusing on the Didache, Didache, with the E having an A sound. Didache. And then, since that's fairly short, we're also going to look at the letters of the Bishop of Antioch in the early first century, a man by the name of Ignatius. He wrote letters to churches that he was responsible for as he was on his way to martyrdom in Rome. He was going to be killed just for being a Christian. And that happened to more than one person in the second and third centuries after the New Testament. So that's the plan. Thank you for being a part of this study. If you have questions or concerns, please drop me a line at my email address that I send out to you in every email. I'd be glad to correspond with you briefly. Thanks.